So next we need to consider where you're placing your hands on the bench. Now, for most of the girls I work with, I tend to start with a fairly neutral position. So neutral just means when you get to the bottom of the rep, that your wrist is directly over your elbow and your elbow is at 45 degrees to your torso. So most often that'll mean that your tip of your thumb is actually on the edge of the nail. So if Mads comes a little wider, brings that thumb out, puts it right on the edge, and then wraps from there, that's usually a pretty good place to start for most women. For the guys, I actually start with just pinky finger on the ring, a little bit wider. Generally, they'll be slightly wider as humans. So Mads will come back to this center position and we'll test it. So we'll bring the bar up, wrap those thumbs, bring the bar down, and then have a look. We're at 45. The wrist is directly over top of the elbow. So that's a perfect neutral grip for Mads. If we bring that up, sometimes it might be advantageous more so for powerlifters to take a slightly wider grip. The reason that people do that, if you've seen any kind of crazy world records with big arches and wide grips, the reason people do that is just to shorten the travel. So if Mads comes out to a pinky finger on that ring, brings that out and still tries to go 45 degrees, we come back up, you can see the distance that the bar has to travel is less. Now, obviously we're loading a lot more through structure here. Using a little bit less muscle tends to beat up the shoulders a little bit more. It's not a preference for me. I don't tend not to use it even with my competitors too much, but it is something that if you want to consider, you can. Next is just variations that we might use during training, just for honestly changing it up a little bit so we're not using the same pattern all the time on the joints. So Mads might go with her index finger on the start of the knurl here, which is going to be what we would usually call a close grip, not in here like most people try to do with close grip. And then her elbows are going to track much more narrow, meaning much more tricep focused, a little bit more front delt, less chest. So they're the typical three that you would see. Every now and then you'll see a medium grip, which just means halfway between the two. And again, usually that's just used to make some variance in the shoulder pattern that we're trying to use. Which one should you be using? If you're targeting strength, that neutral seems to be the most consistent and the best place to be. If you're trying to target hypertrophy, maybe that closer grip gives you a little bit more range of motion for the shoulders and for the triceps. Slightly wider will give you obviously more challenge of the pec. So just making a choice there. Making sure though that you've actually got healthy enough shoulders to deal with that wide grip position, and you can get into an effective position with your shoulders to actually support that stability.